Okay, so why don't we just go ahead and settle in. Just let ourselves get comfortable and arrive in this moment. And just taking a breath, noticing where you are in this moment. Just checking in with your body, your mind and heart. And whatever you find, knowing that it's temporary. And allowing yourself to flow with it, to not cling to what's here, but to just notice its own bubbling, movement, shifting. If there's joy, there may be a bubbling with it. If there's pain, noticing that it has a throbbing or an on-off. And whatever you notice, allowing it to arise off the body. No need to hold on to it. If you're struggling with some tension this evening, you can just gently breathe it out on the out-breath. Just letting the breath support it in rising off and out of your body. And as we do this, just gently emptying out. Letting go of our day. Letting go of our busy thoughts. And letting it be absolutely normal that there's change and flow. If we can, letting ourselves rest in that change and flow. It's like floating down a river on a warm summer day, and it's totally safe. And just noticing what's here now and letting that pass away. And as things are arising and passing, allow yourself to notice any quiet or comfort, or perhaps you like to take a step back inside yourself and feel the quiet in the background. And let yourself breathe into this quiet space, this quiet energy. Letting it get as big as it wants. And resting here. And so there can be both quiet peace and there can be flow. And we rest in this quiet peace, noticing the flow. So wonderful to sit with you guys. So I was thinking about how we're coming into this election, and I've been around some people who have been feeling like they're losing it. Like they feel like overwhelmed and they're feeling like there's too much going on. And so I just wanted to speak to some of that tonight, because I feel like things are heating up right now, you know? And one of the things I was noticing is that there's all these books coming out now and all these whistleblowers. And so we're getting inundated with news of all kinds of things that are painful and difficult to swallow. And I was reading Heather Cox's work. She's a professor out of Boston College, and she's been going through Senate hearings and translating them for people, those kinds of things. And she actually put out something this week that was pretty disturbing in terms of the breadth of the dysfunction of what's been happening politically in the world, and not just in our government, but with other governments as well. And she was just citing all kinds of backroom deals and, I don't know, kind of gangster stuff, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I found myself getting really I had a moment of like, whoa, this cloth is big. It's really big. And there was this moment of, it's a lot. And then all of a sudden, I found myself having this feeling of like, something's broken. Like, what's broken that we're kind of coming into consciousness about? And I could feel a lot of chaos about it. And in psychology, we have this term called optimal frustration. It's like what a baby has just before it has a breakthrough, right? It's like, 2-year-olds will do things like they'll bite and kick and scream, like a couple of weeks before they get the word no, and all of a sudden everything is no, 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 no. And they feel so empowered now because they can say it. But those weeks coming up to it are so painful sometimes. And so I was feeling all this chaos and feeling about this brokenness. And all of a sudden, there was this awareness in me. It was so sweet. It was this idea of our family is broken. Our family is broken. And then as soon as that came into consciousness, it was almost like this idea of waking up to, I remember waking up in my own family, realizing the codependence and the alcohol and the things that had really pained my family when I was growing up. And it felt almost like an epiphany, just like the first time I was in therapy. Like, whoa, like this is big. And with it though, there was this whole thing that fell into place. Like just this awareness of how the world is stuck, our family is stuck in some codependent behavior. We're stuck in some unhealthy behavior. Just kind of like, if you think about that for a moment, an alcoholic family or a family that's struggling with drug abuse or some kind of other kinds of abuse. Like, it's just not healthy. And with that, there can be a lot of pain. But I remember when I first had that realization about my own family, there was also some relief, because suddenly I wasn't crazy anymore. I wasn't struggling with trying to normalize what was happening. And I had a very similar feeling in that moment. Like, oh, it's this. Oh, we're just struggling under this unhealthy system. But it's not who we are. And we have lots of different wisdom traditions to deal with this. This can be healed. And just like it was healed in my own family, and maybe in yours, if you've had to deal with anything like that, there's this healing that's possible when you wake up to what the problem is. And so I just wanted to take a couple of moments to talk a little bit about kind of codependent systems for a second. One of the things that's famous about them is that people fall into certain roles. We say that when families are healthy, that everybody shifts roles. And in an unhealthy family, people can get stuck in a certain place, and they're not allowed to be all of themselves. And so I just wanted to go through the roles in a codependent family for a minute. So the first one is the person who is the addict or the person who is struggling. And we can see this in our own world system, that there are certain people that are really struggling. And in a family, we all have to deal with that person's behavior. We all have to deal with that person's acting out, that person's hiding, that person's lying, that person's cheating, stealing, whatever it might be. And so there's somebody who's holding that role of acting out. And then with that, there is a caretaker role, people who are enablers. And if we think about the system we're dealing with in the world, there's a lot of enablers. You know, I think of people that are the press secretaries in government, and they're just kind of moving the story. And enablers are people that try to make it look like it's all normal. And it's like, but it doesn't feel normal. Something's off here, right? There can also be the mascot. And in that system, those are the family clown, the person who makes jokes, the person who tries to deal with the stress by entertaining us and distracting us. And I thought about that, and I thought, who are the mascots in this large system? And I thought, there's so much entertainment that we have, that we can watch, that takes our eye off of the difficulty, makes you laugh about it. But the problem is still there. It's still harming. One person I think who has stepped out of that is, I was thinking about Jimmy Kimmel, that he often tries to step sideways of his work and be very real about what's paining us in the world and doing that. In these kinds of systems, there are scapegoats. And these are the people that are blamed as being broken. There's something wrong with them. And in my work, the scapegoat is just somebody who's yelling the call, this isn't normal, this isn't right. And I think about in our system, in our society right now, how Black people have been scapegoated, how the protesters have been scapegoated. So anybody who's calling the whistleblowers, anybody who calls the call gets scapegoated. And then we have the heroes. And these are the people who are really self-independent, and they're hard workers, and they keep going and they tread water and they keep their head above water. But it's almost like they're trying to do good in spite of. In an unhealthy family, this is the kid who, the family might be falling apart, and this is the kid who gets straight A's and, is on the soccer team and, letters in varsity, that kind of thing. It's like trying to carry us forward and act like we can do this. And I think of who we are, particularly in our white privilege, as really holding that role. That there's a lot of people that are acting like it's okay and I'm okay and we're going to be okay. And yet not necessarily addressing what's happening. And then there are those that are the lost child. And these are the forgotten people, the quiet people. In a dysfunctional family, it's the person who gets forgotten and left by the side, and they kind of wilt. And I was thinking of our homeless people and the poor and those people that are facing mass evictions right now. And I thought, we're all here in this together, in these different roles. And if, in fact, what's here is that it's just kind of an addictive system, a codependent and unhealthy system, there's a chance for us to heal and a chance for us to grow, a chance for us to name it and to become something different. What's really beautiful about this is that a lot of people are struggling because their mind is in chaos. And this allows us, when we start making sense of it, it allows us to move from chaos to clarity. And it allows us to see, yes, how broad the cloth is, but at the same time, oh, there's a way to heal it. And so this moves us into sanity. We move from fear and not knowing and insanity and chaos and feeling lost and like I have no place to stand, that when we name a system that's unhealthy, it's like, okay, now I know where this stands and where to go. And so we have an opportunity here to think of this differently. And we have things in place that actually heal. You know, I was sitting with this, just kind of sitting in meditation with it, and I remembered the 12 steps of AA. And I had this thought, what if we applied the 12 steps to the whole world? What if we sat down and said, you know, step 1, our lives are, I'll just read them. I brought a copy of them. But that we admitted that we were powerless, that our lives had become unmanageable. I just find myself wondering, would anybody disagree with that on the planet today? You know? That we came to believe in a higher power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity. And, you know, I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago. I said, I really believe that the world will change, not with one intervention, but a psychological, social, spiritual intervention. It has to be all three. We have to come home to ourselves deeply, to come back. That we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of this higher power, to our own spiritual practices, to our own awakening. That we come back into sanity. I love number 4, that we make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And I thought, what if we made a fearless moral inventory of ourselves right now? About the way we treat our Black brothers and sisters and the way we treat our poor and our children and families in cages on the border. What if we made a fearless moral inventory of all that's not working? Number 5, that we admitted to this higher power, to ourselves and another human being, the nature of our wrongs. What if we actually did that? Took ownership and accountability for what we've done. This is all part of our path of healing. That we were entirely ready to have all these shortcomings removed. That we really showed up for, I'm here for the work. Whatever it takes me to surrender and do and give, I'm here for the work. May it be so. That we asked our higher power, our spiritual practice, whatever that which is bigger than us, to help us do this work, to remove these shortcomings that we have, to move into something healthier. That we made a list of persons we had harmed and been willing to make amends. What would the world look like if we did that on a global level? Made direct amends to such people, except when to do so would cause harm. So that's really important. We don't do it because we feel like it today. One of the things I see in the black-white dialogue is white people trying to do reparative work with Black people before they've done the work of waking up. And often Black people say, "Oof, it didn't work so well. Please do your work first. That would help." And continue to take personal inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admit it. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with our spiritual self. Only looking for the will to carry out that which wants to happen, wants to wake up. And then as a practice, having done this, to be willing to live it in the world, to share it with others, to bring this healthy living to more and more people. And this is just one. This is just one way to think about it. This is just one way to think about an intervention. But I found myself, as I was reading those 12 steps, like something deeply started to release in me. Like, oh, like we have a way to do this. We already have models. If we can wake up and name what this is. I remembered when I went to graduate school to become a therapist, and went to social work school, and the first lesson I ever got in the very first class, this teacher said, here's your first lesson, don't ever forget it. And the professor said, how you define a problem will define your solution. Don't ever forget that. And I never forgot it. So if we define the problem as over there, them, separate from us, their problem, we may feel like we have to get rid of them or contain them or fight them. But if we see it as, oh, that's our family. Oh, our family is under this spell of codependence or not being awake enough or not healthy enough, then we have a chance to do something different. The way we handle it will be different. So I just wanted to open that up and just ask, just for you to notice how that lands. Like if you think of the world as not a horrible place, but maybe it's suffering under codependence or addiction to fame and power and money and whatever else it could be. And if you see the world that way, what happens inside? I'm just curious how it lands for people. Or any thoughts you have about that. Or you may have a different way it lands for you. And you can unmute yourself. Did you want to say something, Kathy?
No, I'm still chewing on this. It's
Okay.
excellent.
I just saw that you unmuted yourself for a second, so I'll just mute you back. Okay. Kathleen?
Well, can you repeat again what you had us thinking? Because I had some thoughts, but they weren't like clarified. So can you repeat it again?
Yeah, just wondering, like, if you think of that the world is struggling under codependence or an unhealthy, maybe an addictive system, and that we already have treatment models for how you treat a family that's struggling that way. How does that land? Does it make it easier, harder?
That's exactly what I was thinking about. And first, the 12 steps, like I've been in this 12-step program, and like recently I've been struggling with a health issue. And the 12-step program just is great for me. And I read the big book and I read passages out of it. So, the 12 steps is really nice for dealing with this. And then when you look at the dysfunction, because a big part of this, I had a big awakening when I was sick and kind of found out there was a complication to that. And I just so much realized my place in the family and how I got love and how I could get attention of being the caregiver and being the glue and being like knowing that I came in a a very chaotic family with some alcoholism and some different things, and I realized that my younger brother and I really became the caretakers and the doers and the movers, and I realized then I was like the glue that kept the family together, but it was like sending me to the glue factory. It was killing me.
Thank
And
you.
so
Yeah.
so with that, I really looked at my role within the family, and I spoke with my younger brother, who we were at the tail end. Like, goodness, we think we have to give 90 in relationships to get 10% of love. Like, we'd be worthy, or we could keep our family together. We got, because we saw our mom cry, our dad leave, and it was
Thanks.
like we did everything to keep it together, and and we were still doing that. Like, we were 14 and 11 years old, but we need relationships and validating of doing 50% and doing our own personal work, whatever that looks like, and
So
realizing that somebody was the mascot and somebody was. So I think it really helps to look at those roles when our world is so dysfunctional. And I think it's a great tool
thank
because
you.
you are just overwhelmed and it's just coming at us like a battling gun, like nobody can really, you know,
Thank
handle the
you.
speed with which it's coming. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. I think it's very helpful.
Thank you. So, yeah, I think Kathy brings up this point about our own role in it, and we may find ourselves playing that role as well. Other people, other thoughts about that?
Maureen,
Yeah.
I love what you said. I think it's beautiful. It works. It's that pause before you get angry or react to a group that's doing something that's painful to watch and to see. But I've caught myself several times wanting to step out, not the hero, but just, do something in a softened way, open to other people. And then there's COVID. And then I'm feeling a little more stuck in my house and not going out. I've had some Zooms, but I get caught in that part of it. And I guess you're talking more about in your head and how you're managing it, perhaps.
Yeah, thanks. I think that part of what I'm saying is if this makes sense to you, right? And you wake up to this idea, then part of what we do when we're helping our family get better is we say, you know what I'm realizing? I'm having this awareness, and I'm having this awareness that maybe this is what's going on, and maybe there's a way for us to heal it. And that can come through in conversations you're having with people, what you put on your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed or your Twitter, right? And it's this idea of, could it be that part of what's happening in this moment is actually an awakening of another level of consciousness in humanity? It's happened many times on the planet. I mean, we had things like known as the Iron Age or the Axial Age. There have been these ages when humanity woke up to a different level of functioning, right? And what if humanity, I'm just using this example, and again, you might have your own. You might have a spiritual example or something else. But what if we're waking up to a new consciousness? And so, as each one of us wakes up to this possibility and this idea, then more and more people get a chance to wake up to it. And more people, if you did grow up in a codependent family, let's say, or an alcoholic family or something like that, and you were the first person in your family to kind of notice it, notice the impact that had on your siblings. Like maybe a couple of months or a year later, they were like, you're right. Dad is drinking too much. I never thought about that, right? I mean, consciousness starts waking itself up. And when we wake up, we come out of this chaos, this optimal frustration that we're in. And so it's just this idea that if your mind wakes up to something, you can't help but bring it forward. You can't help but do your work on it. You know, whether that's letter writing or speaking in this way, or, you know, if you love the 12 steps, using the 12 steps in your life, or using them and talking about them in terms of the chaos we see in the world. You know, those kinds of ideas. So it's in our own mind, you know, and there was Kathleen saying, oh yeah, I'm dealing with codependence in my own family. But it's also this bigger idea, this systemic idea of, wait a minute, what if this is our family? What if we're waking up as a planetary family to a higher level of consciousness now? And thankfully, we have systems that actually know how to heal these systems, right? But thanks. Other people? Other thoughts? Yeah, Judy.
I heard it said in a little bit different way this last weekend in a women's group I'm in, and this gal was presenting on the big cosmology from Brian Swim, this big, long cosmology and the changes, like I think you were talking about in different ways too, that have come over ages. And we outgrow the current system and it's no longer working. And she put it in this analogy of being in an egg. You know, that we're living in this system that's the egg, but we're outgrowing it. And the pressures from within are breaking that egg open. And it's uncomfortable, it's transformative, and it's a new consciousness and how to move beyond where we're stuck into this next layer, this next awakening. And I loved how you put this in the 12-step context, and the part that struck me is the making the fearless moral inventory of not, I think our everyday mind is so used to looking for the enemy, who's to blame, like target this one or target that one or whatever. It's missing the bigger picture. And so going down a list of all the ways that we'd like it to be better for everybody versus trying to find who to shoot for this, whatever, or to get rid of. Just like in our family, if, there's dysfunction going on, there's really no way to go, well, if we just got rid of dad or mom or whoever's the problem, we'd be fine. Well, that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Because dysfunction continues anyway.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, and I think that, you bring up a good point, which is that if we were to take the 12 steps, for instance, you can do the 12 steps for yourself. And I think that's a beautiful way to do the work. But I'm also systemically saying, do it as we. What I'm talking about here is moving from I mind to we mind, or me mind to we mind. What if we sat in our groups, whatever group it is? It doesn't matter if you're in the, senior citizen group or an Al-Anon group, or, you're a teacher at a school. What if we move this consciousness into, wait a minute, let's do it for everybody? What if the United States, for instance, did it as the United States? If we did it as a country, what have we done historically, right? Fearless moral inventory of our history across the world and with our own citizens. It would change us. It would change us, because how can you do a moral inventory and not go, there's some work we have to do here, right? And there's no bad guys, right? I mean, I've done so much work with addictive families, and I can tell you that I'll use the example of daddy, when daddy is drinking and drugging and having a hard time, and we finally get into the treatment modality, I'm always touched by the pain that the person who's been stuck in the addiction has had. I mean, when we look at addictions, typically what we see is that trauma is a huge piece of them. There are no bad guys. There are no bad guys, but we might have an unhealthy family. We need to get in treatment and get back on in a healthy pattern. So thanks for that. Anybody else that wanted to share thoughts or ideas? Yeah, Rich.
One thing that saying is, I always think of an onion skin model, different levels of systems. And what I can feel from what you're saying, what you've always been saying is, go to some place that's more spacious, that has more more purview over the situation, and from that perspective, hopefully you get a little bit more wisdom and understanding, and also you're stepping back a little bit.
Yeah, and so you're not drowning. I mean, you know, if any of you have done therapy or work with your family, you know, think about, that's beautiful. Think about the difference between I'm a victim of my life versus that moment you got clear about what the dynamics were. Like if you got clear about abuse, or you got clear about addiction, or you got clear about codependence in your family. And remember that feeling of how you shifted from I'm drowning under this, I don't understand why I can't get up on top of this wave, to this moment of, oh, it's this? Oh, okay, I have some breath now. Oh, I'm not bad? Oh, okay, I'm not bad. And this is one of the things, is that when we're in the chaos mind, we actually believe we are the problem. What's wrong with us? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my sister? Why is she acting that way? Why is my brother acting that way? What's wrong with them? But when the system is off, everybody doesn't look healthy, right? And those roles that I pointed to, whether it's hero, scapegoat, the comedian, you know, all of those roles are actually people's responses to a situation that's not healthy. You know, in a healthy family, you get to be all of them. You get to have a moment where you're funny, you get to be the hero, you get to, you know, be the scapegoat, you get to have a moment of being lost. We rotate them. But in a fixed, unhealthy system, we get stuck in them. You know, like Kathleen was saying, she got stuck in a caretaking role. In a healthy family, she would have gotten to be everything. Any of us get to be everything. So there's this quote from Simon Sinek that I wanted to read to you. He did a lot of work. He consults to corporations. And he did a lot of work in the last 10 years around millennials. And at first he was kind of giving them a hard time. Like, you know, what's wrong with millennials? Why won't they work harder? You know, how come they're not doing our game? You know, that kind of stuff. And he actually just recently came out with a completely different mindset. And this is a quote he said: "If a whole generation is struggling, maybe it's not them." And he said, it's like if you struggle in every relationship, don't you eventually figure out you're the common denominator? You know, you have to kind of like go, maybe I have some work to do. But I love that. If a whole generation is struggling, we could say if a whole world is struggling, or 98% of the world is struggling, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's not them. And so what happens if we saw this as an opportunity that we're being shown the fabric of codependence and addiction, and this way that humanity has been functioning much like an unhealthy family, with some people at the top, and we all got to watch what they're doing, and then we're all scrambling around for our role in it. And what if we saw it in this larger systemic way, and we were part of the voice that said, you know what? I think we got to do this different. I think it's time for us to move to a higher consciousness, a healthier consciousness, for the whole family, the whole planet, the whole country, our whole community, whatever that might be. And we each have our own thing we're called to, right? We're not all going to do the same. But if we see this, we have a chance to heal it. We don't go under. We don't have to go under, you know? So let's just take a moment just to go inside for a moment. So just close your eyes and get comfortable. And there's all this information that's out there that we were just talking about. Notice if it makes you feel at ease, more sane, or whether it's upsetting. Whatever is here for you is fine. Conditions are such. And let yourself just take a step back inside yourself, noticing where there's some quiet or comfort. And just breathing into that. And if this quiet energy is looking out on the world, just noticing that, oh, consciousness is changing. We may be waking up to the fabric of what this is, and we have answers for it. Just noticing how that is. How does your body feel in this moment? How does your heart feel? Your mind? And let us move it into our mindful moment. May the work that we're doing here in our own practice, may it pull us out of the chaos into wisdom, to seeing what is, and to be able to work skillfully with it, so that all of us, all our brothers and sisters, all beings across the world can pull out of the harm and codependence and pain and wake up to a new consciousness. One that supports all beings, the planet, well-being for all. Mm.